What happened to a local female reporter in Toronto on Sunday has become a talking point around the country today and is already having consequences for the people involved. At least 3 fans yelled obscenity at a City TV reporter as she tried to do a live report at a soccer game. Now, we've bleeped out the most offensive language, but you'll get a sense of it. Here's a look at what happened, and it's already cost at least one of the guys in this video his job.
Were you guys waiting around to see if you could F her in the me live on TV?
Yes.
Is that what you were waiting?
Not you, but yes.
You were? Seriously?
Yes.
Can I ask why you would want to do something like that?
I feel like it's quite substantial.
You'll see that even when they're confronted, the men defend the vulgar language. They had lots of opportunity here to apologize, realize that this is not a good idea, but they keep going. And they argue that lots of people are yelling this phrase at female reporters lately. And in fact, that has become a disturbing trend in the U.S. and Canada. Many female reporters, including some CBC journalists, have been subjected to this. So the video has gone viral and the reaction has been swift. Now, we've just learned this afternoon one of the men involved has been fired. That's according to a statement from Hydro One, the provincial power authority in Ontario. Earlier today, the soccer team outside where this took place, Toronto FC, issued a statement as this video started going viral. Here's part of what its parent company said. Quote, "We are appalled that this trend of disrespectful behavior would make its way to our city, let alone anywhere near our stadium. We are working to identify the individuals, and when we do, they will be banned from all of our facilities." Goes on to say, "Our organization is committed to an environment where everyone can feel safe and included, and discrimination or intolerance of any kind will be met with a swift and serious response." It's worth noting when they say that all of their facilities, we're talking about MLSE. These guys can't go to a Jays game, they can't go to a soccer game, they can't go to a hockey game, Raptors game. The story is more than just men behaving badly, though. It also gets into the elements of online shaming and personal accountability. So we've got lots to talk about. And for that, I'm joined by Ramona Pringle. She's an associate professor of new media at Ryerson University in Toronto. Okay, let's start with the beginning of all of this phenomenon of people running up to women who were live on TV, doing what we call a live hit, and yelling an incredibly vulgar phrase into the camera. How this has taken off, I don't quite understand. Can you shed any light on that for us?
I mean, I can't understand it either in terms of, just how you would feel comfortable on a live broadcast yelling at something that's so vulgar. But if you look at sort of trends that we see online, trends that you see across social media, there's 2 pieces to it that I see leading to this point. One is there's a huge, online sexism is rampant. And if you look at the behavior on Twitter alone towards female journalists, towards any kind of prominent female entity with anything to say, it's really remarkable because the comments that come back are based on looks, are based on sexual attributes, not based on their work, not based on what they do. And it's massive. It's out of control. This also gets met with, for better or for worse, there's the plus and minus to this, but this shaming culture, or, what we also hear called outrage culture, or a call-out culture, where people say, you know what, we're not going to let you behave this way. We're going to call you out for it. And so on one hand, you have people just thinking that they can talk all the time. On the other hand, there's positives to it. And I think when you finally see the reporters speaking up for themselves, especially the female reporters, it comes from both of those. On one hand, it comes from sort of enough is enough. We're getting this in the real world. We're getting this online on Twitter. But it also comes from this sort of call-out culture that says, it's the same thing that's brought us hashtags like Black Lives Matter or Yes All Women, where people see a trend that's a negative trend and say, you know what, together, collectively, we're going to speak up against this.
So on the one hand, I look at it as a woman and as a reporter and go, come on, seriously, I cannot believe this happened once, let alone that it's trending. And then I watch this video. I cannot believe these guys, when she turns around and challenges them, and honestly, good for her. Her name is Shauna Hunt. She works at City TV in Toronto. Good for her for challenging them on this. They defend it.
Right.
I was as shocked, I think, by that.
Well, and when again going back to the sort of social media and this public shaming that exists, sometimes the criticism that we'll hear is, oh, everyone makes a mistake, and in the past we've been able to make amends, we've been able to apologize and move on, but now it's all archived in a Google search. Now, it goes viral and it's too late to ever make amends, and it can ruin people's lives. This is a slightly different case because there's cameras rolling, because she does give them the opportunity to apologize, and if this has gone viral, they had their chance.
So what's interesting now is indeed it has gone viral, and the consequences are that, first of all, just from the fan perspective, they've been banned from every major facility in Toronto. Everybody is talking about them for all the wrong reasons. One of them has lost his job. At what point does this now go too far? Are we taking the reaction, the public shaming, using this online world to do that, beyond what's appropriate for the offense?
Right. So what we hear often is this term trial by social media, right? So instead of trial by jury, instead of due process, and we don't have that due process online yet. If this does go viral, and we know the reason that things go viral is because it hits people emotionally, that there's a very visceral, very automatic response. And the same thing that might cause someone to tweet without thinking about it and maybe say something offensive that if they had had any kind of reasonable, 30 seconds even to reflect on it, they may not say, is the same thing that will get people responding to something and really angry. And what we see by these big organizations, whether it's Hydro One or whether it's the facilities that are banning people, firing people, they need to respond because otherwise the crowd, the online mob, will come after them, and they want that due process. So this is where we're at. It's an interesting time in that the online world hasn't necessarily caught up with the idea of innocent until proven guilty, and yet when you've got footage, it sort of feels like, well, the proof is there, and how do you fight that in this online world? So there's this push for, in some cases, democracy. This new sort of let's have our voices, let's speak out for what we think is right, and maybe make, in a case like this, I think there's a bit of, let's make an example of that so that maybe we can hush this trend a little bit.
So if social media, using that term, I mean, it's such a catch-all, but if it has evolved to the point where we say, okay, we're going to call people out for a behavior we think is irresponsible, we're going to use social media, sort of bite back. Are there examples where people have caught themselves too and gone, okay, enough? These guys have been roundly humiliated. Now, I'm not really sure where the line is. Maybe they, need to be called out for a few more days. Maybe they all need to lose their jobs. I mean, the question is, when is it far enough? And has the online world figured out where that line is?
Well, that's where this gets really tricky. So, decades, generations, centuries have been put into having a justice system that is fair. And trial by social media, even if in a case like this, we might personally support it, we might personally look at them and go, you know what? That's inappropriate. That the police are even saying that there could be charges based on harassment, sexual harassment, mischief. So even if in a case by case on a personal account we might support it, there is something to be said for due process and fairness. And we've seen this in other cases. Even what comes to mind is the case of Rehtaeh Parsons, where the case was almost closed. Anonymous got involved and said, we're going to publish the name of these boys who are involved. And there is that concern of trial by social media, of what happens if the people are innocent, of what happens when something doesn't go through the rigors of due process, our Canadian judicial system. So it's complicated, and I think as we spend more and more time online, we need to have a bit of both, right? We need to have some of that agency that we feel when we see, we so often feel powerless when people say these offensive things, when we know the sexism is rampant, and when we feel like we can't do anything about it by normal due process. That's when you then see social media rising up and feeling like change can come about, like feeling like there will be repercussions for these people's actions, but we also know that it can get out of control and that there is the danger of the mob mentality online. And that's where I think, some of the due process that we've developed in our offline lives, we could benefit from bringing some of that into the digital sphere as well.
Ramona Pringle, really interesting to talk to you about this. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, absolutely.